How can you show your dog just how thankful you are for them this Thanksgiving? By keeping them safe on the big day. Here's how. Welcome back to Alpha Paw, your destination for everything dog. I'm Bernie Zilio, and I'm on a mission to answer every doggone question you have ever had about your fur babies. And today, we're talking about how we can keep our dogs safe on one of the best days of the year, Thanksgiving. Fortunately, we have an amazing vet with us today, Dr. Jordan Cole. Dr. Cole earned his veterinary degree at UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine in 2018 and has considerable training in both small and zoological animal medicine. Beyond clinical work, his interests include endangered species conservation and One Health, and he is currently involved in giraffe research. Dr. Cole will be filling in for Dr. Ross today, and we are so happy to have him. Welcome to Alpha Paw, Dr. Cole.
Great to be here with you, Bernie. Thanks for having me on. It is truly an honor to sub in for the legendary Dr. Ross today.
The legendary Dr. Ross. He will be thrilled to hear that. Now, Dr. Cole, I want to get right into the meat and potatoes, excuse the pun, of this interview. So I want to get right into the meat and potatoes of this interview and talk about the biggest part about Thanksgiving, aside from family and friends and political debate, the turkey. So I know it's just sitting there. It smells delicious. It's cooking all day. And people like me and dog parents everywhere are tempted to give some of this to their dogs. So is that something that we can feel comfortable doing on the big day?
Sure. That's a great question, Bernie. You know, some people, or I should say a lot of people have very strong feelings about turkey one way or the other. Some people love it. Some people hate it. I would say in terms of feeding it to your dog, potentially a few small boneless, pieces that are well cooked, probably won't do much harm. But we want to just make sure that the meat is fully cooked through. If you end up feeding raw or undercooked meat to your dog, that can be potentially dangerous. There can be types of bacteria on there that are dangerous, things like salmonella or campylobacter, not just for our dogs, but for us as well. I think the name of the game is wanting to make it, very small amounts of any sort of human food. Of course, we want to make sure it's safe as well.
That's a pretty good rule of thumb to have. So what about, I know some people want to just throw their dog a giant turkey leg and have them gnaw on the turkey leg while everyone's enjoying their food. Is that okay?
That one might make me a little nervous. Okay. I think, a big reason why is because of the bone in the turkey leg. A few things there. So dogs, when they chew, they sort of have a crushing action. And so that can, cause potentially sharp pieces of bone to become ingested. That can irritate the lining of the GI tract or even cause worse things. And then if they end up ingesting larger pieces of bone, that may, have them liable to a GI obstruction as well, which may actually need surgery. So anytime a bone is involved, I do get a little bit nervous there. The other thing that, we talk about with turkey legs, a lot of times they're going to be covered, with all that nice, delicious skin that we like to eat. But that actually can be kind of detrimental to dogs as well. Anytime, we're feeding fatty foods to dogs, that's dangerous, not just for GI upset, things like vomiting and diarrhea, but potentially worse diseases, things like inflammation of the pancreas, which is called pancreatitis, which a lot of times actually they need pretty intensive hospitalization to treat.
Wow. This is interesting because I think a lot of people, not just on Thanksgiving, but in general, if they're eating any kind of meat, pork, steak, whatever, they think that because the dogs like the way it tastes or smells, that they'll just throw them a piece of the fat and you're saying, or the skin, and you're saying that that could be detrimental.
Yeah, I would. And we unfortunately see this, quite often. Some dogs are more susceptible to, the worst, effects, things like pancreatitis more than others, but certainly would recommend staying away from any sort of fatty foods, when you're feeding your dogs.
Excellent. Very good to know for all days of the year, not just Thanksgiving. But moving on to my personal favorite, the stuffing. There's a lot that goes into stuffing. Most people don't even know what's in it. I don't really know what's in it, but it tastes good. Is that something that our dogs can enjoy as well?
It's a good question. I love stuffing as well. It's certainly one of my favorite fixings when it comes to Thanksgiving. Hopefully, it's not your dog's favorite fixing, though. And I say that because a lot of times stuffing will, include ingredients such as garlic or onions. And actually, both of those foods can be highly toxic to dogs and cats. They cause a condition called hemolytic anemia, which basically means that the toxins from the onion and garlic will cause the red blood cells, which are the cells in the bloodstream that carry oxygen to all of our tissues. They'll cause the red blood cells to break open. And if that happens to enough red blood cells, that can lead to a situation where you have anemia or a deficiency in those red blood cells. And so that can be a very dangerous situation. So, bottom line, if you think that your dog may have gotten into something containing onions and garlic, would highly recommend, contacting your vet as soon as possible. If it's within an hour or so, we may be able to induce vomiting at the clinic in order to get some of that material out of their system. However, if they are showing clinical signs of anemia, unfortunately, that very possibly might warrant pretty intensive hospitalization. Things like blood transfusions might be necessary. So, honestly, when it comes to onion and garlic, please do your best to stay away from that when you're dealing with your dogs or your cats.
Wow, that's excellent to know because, again, on days that aren't Thanksgiving, I think some people are inclined to let their dogs lick whatever remnants are on their plates. And we do consume things that contain onion and garlic very often. So that's excellent to know for me, for everybody else. I wanted to ask you, Dr. Cole, what are some symptoms or signs that we should be looking out for on Thanksgiving or in general that our dog ingested something that it shouldn't have?
That's a wonderful question. There are a lot of potential toxins out there that can cause a whole range of clinical signs. Anything from them just, being a little bit lethargic and just not acting right to, GI signs, so vomiting, diarrhea, to neurologic signs, maybe they're stumbling, potentially they, maybe showing signs of something like a seizure. But beyond that, there are so many different things you might see. So if you have any concern at all, or if you have any suspicion, you have a dog or a cat that is a little bit sneaky and likes to, get into the garbage or eat things they're not supposed to, definitely listen to that gut feeling and contact a veterinarian or contact the ASPCA, Animal Poison Control Center, if you have any questions. And I can go into that more later as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now, because we're in 2020 and everyone and their mother has been baking bread all year, I'm sure Thanksgiving will be no different. So what about homemade breads of all kinds? Does that contain any ingredients that we should be concerned about if our dogs consume?
Yep. And it's a good question. I actually have a sourdough starter bubbling away in the kitchen as we speak. So very topical question, Bernie. Yes. So, that is a really good question and one that I would say yes. As a lot of us now know, when we bake bread, a major component of that raw dough is active yeast. And that's because yeast, when it consumes the sugars in the rest of the dough, it creates carbon dioxide gas, which is what helps bread dough rise. See, this is why science is so cool. We go from animals and veterinary medicine over to baking bread, and it all is connected. But anyways, yeast creates carbon dioxide gas. It also creates alcohols from processing those sugars. And so the theory would be, if raw bread dough is ingested, by your dog, that yeast may still be able to work, when it's in its stomach or in the GI tract, may lead to potentially bloating or abnormal neurologic signs. So would definitely not want to let, your pup eat any of that raw bread dough.
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, keep the dog out of the kitchen on Thanksgiving and try to keep an eye on any sneaky pets that tend to get into the trash or linger around for some scraps because you really never know. And that is not a day of the year that you want to be ending family functions of any kind to drive to the hospital or the vet. So Excellent, excellent advice.
No, you're right. And I will say, nobody wants to have their, function interrupted or their holiday interrupted. But that's what we're here for. We work all year, every day of the year, just in case emergencies like this come up. It doesn't matter the day, it doesn't matter the time. And so, don't feel like, you shouldn't interrupt something just because it's a holiday. Better safe than sorry.
Pet parents in general, I think any animal lover is so appreciative of veterinarians and any kind of animal experts. And you're right. If there is an issue, please interrupt your family function. It's not worth your dog or cat, whatever's life. So this has been incredibly informative. Is there anything else that we should be worried about when it comes to Thanksgiving for our dogs?
Sure. Let's talk about dessert for a second here, which I actually never am able to leave room for on Thanksgiving, but some people somehow do. Choc- Chocolate has been, I think, covered already by Dr. Ross. We know it is dangerous for dogs, causes GI signs, cardiac signs, neurologic signs, so wanting to stay away from chocolate. Another interesting one that maybe people don't know as much about is called xylitol. It starts with an X, xylitol. It is sort of an artificial sweetener. Sometimes it's used in preparing desserts. You may have noticed it on your package of gum as well. That one is actually pretty toxic to dogs as well. It's a liver toxin. It can cause pretty significant drops in blood sugar, which can be very dangerous. So wanting to make sure when we're preparing any desserts in the kitchen, we just know what we're working with and keep it away from our dogs. Another really important one would be raisins and grapes. Those are known to be bad for dogs' kidneys, can cause really significant kidney injury in dogs. Even if they just only eat one or a couple of them, sometimes it can be enough to get them really sick. So please make sure you're staying away from giving your dogs any grapes or raisins or anything containing raisins as well. And lastly, this is not really a dessert item, but a lot of people are going to be potentially sprucing up their houses if they're having people over, hopefully less so during this pandemic, but who knows. And one thing we want to keep in mind for cats actually is that if you're going to be bringing flowers into your home, please, if you own a cat, do not buy lilies. Lilies are very toxic to cats. It's also a kidney toxin and can be quite dangerous. So just be aware of that. If you're a cat owner, stay away from lily flowers.
I swear, I learn something new on this show every day. Thank you so much, Dr. Cole. Now, how can our cats and dogs, mostly dogs because it's a dog show, enjoy Thanksgiving in a problematic way?
Yeah, it's a great question. You do the best you can, and sometimes things still go wrong. But I think we do have some strategies. If you really want to, give your dog a little bit of human food, again, just making sure that you do your research and make sure that it's safe. There are some types of fruits and vegetables, potentially little bits of pumpkin or potato, maybe little bits of apple, that will probably be pretty innocuous. But, as a veterinarian, it's really hard for me to, endorse people feeding human food to their pets. It's, something that we try and stay away from as much as possible because you never know how they're going to react to it. So, another alternative might be if you really do want to, give treats to your animal, feed them pet treats, feed them treats that are specifically made for dogs or cats, that hopefully would be, more harmless to them and potentially, taste better to them. Also, in terms of treating, we want to just make sure that we stick to the 10% rule where we make sure we don't want to feed or I should say, we don't want treats to compose greater than 10% of their overall caloric intake for the day. Dogs and cats, we see a lot of them come into the clinic that are overweight or obese. It's a big deal. And so a lot of reason why is because they are overtreated. So, there are more ways to show that, we love and care for our animals beyond just feeding them. We want to support that human animal bond as much as possible as veterinarians. All of us love our animals, but beyond, giving them treats, things like spending time with them, playing with them outside, going on walks, cuddling them, just spending time on the couch with them are all ways that, I think our animals, can get enjoyment from being around us and vice versa.
Absolutely. And I love that 10% rule, and I will apply it to myself because Lord knows it's needed, especially on Thanksgiving. But I so appreciate you being with us today. I think this has been a very informative and helpful video. I, for one, have my dog at the top of my list of things I'm thankful for. So keeping him healthy is definitely up there as well. So, do you have more questions for us? Drop them down in the comment section below. Again, I'm Bernie Zilio, and this is Alpha Paw. Be sure you subscribe so you don't miss one single doggone episode. We'll see you next time, and happy feasting.